Inside this package is something very special, the world's first mass-produced speedcube version of a puzzle that's been rapidly gaining in popularity. Of course, the puzzle that I'm talking about is the Face-Turning Octahedron, or FTO. Up to this point, if you wanted one that turned well, you either had to take a cheap LAN and spend hours meticulously sanding down all the pieces, or you could do what I did recently by turning a Rubiks cube into an FTO, a process which is about as crazy and time-consuming as it looks. But if you just wanted a cheap option that turns well out of the box, you've been pretty much out of luck until DianSheng came along. For just $18, this new stickerless FTO not only has magnets in it, but also promises to be the very first one that's actually speedcubable out of the box. And to test that theory, I'm going to spend the next 24 hours of my life playing with this thing, setting it up, and then learning, practicing, and improving my FTO skills so that we can see a full picture of just how this thing performs. So the time is 12 o'clock noon, and I'm going to start off by giving some first impressions. The first thing I noticed just holding it in my hands is it's definitely a lot smaller than either the LAN or the XTO, but as someone with fairly big hands who still struggles a little bit to do finger tricks on this thing, I think the smaller size might actually be helpful. Frustratingly, the color scheme is exactly the same as what I'm used to, except for red and green being mysteriously flipped around, although admittedly this does make a bit more sense with red and orange and green and blue being opposites, so maybe I'll just have to get used to it. The colors all look great with the notable exception of gray, ew, and it has an old school glossy plastic finish which can be a little bit slippery, but I don't think it'll be a big problem. So let's do some first turns. Ooh. First impressions, it feels very smooth and quiet compared to the XTO. It just has a very lightweight, effortless feeling to the turning. Although I guess that's a result of this thing having ball bearings and magnets and multiple layers of plastic, which just makes it very heavy and loud and incredibly clacky feeling by comparison. Despite the incredibly different feeling, I'm not quite ready to say that this one turns better. In fact, it actually feels pretty similar in terms of fluidity and like corner cutting. Of course, it's still miles ahead of other mass-produced options like the LAN. I'm just not quite sure yet how it'll stack up against my custom-made XTO. I went ahead and did some initial solves using the inefficient method I came up with. My first solve was 212, which is about what I was averaging before. So now it's 1 p.m. and I want to get a better sense of what's inside this thing so that maybe we can set it up and improve it. Well, that was easy to take apart. It looks like the mechanism works just like other FTOs, where the base puzzle is just these hidden centerpieces, as well as these big edge pieces that fit in like this. And then all the other pieces just fit into the gaps on top of that base puzzle. So you have these big corner pieces, and then the little triangles that just squeeze right in between. Some of the pieces have these little hexagonal ridges, which kind of helps reduce friction and create a lighter turning feel to the turning. And just like the XTO, it has magnets so that the corner pieces attract to all the triangles. They're not especially strong, but they don't need to be, again, because of that light turning. The screws are easy to access without taking it apart, just right down the middle there, and it does come with a bit of factory lube inside, but I'm going to see if I can fine tune those tensions and maybe add a bit of my own lube to see if I can make it turn a little bit better. So turns out I wasn't really able to loosen it without the whole thing just becoming unstable, but I was able to add a bit of my own lube, just some basic silicone and lubrical silk, which makes it a lot more smooth and a little bit more controlled feeling. But now that it's 2 p.m., I'm gonna stop reinforcing my own bad solving habits and actually learn a real speed solving method for the FTO. I've done a bit of research and it seems like the most popular and easy to learn beginner's method is called the Ben Cisco method. Like many things in the FTO world, it was created by Ben Puzzles. He also created the design for the XTO. And he has a 38-minute YouTube tutorial that seems to be very well produced. I'll link it down below. So I'm gonna spend the next hour or so watching and rewatching that, following along in my own FTO, figuring out a new way of doing things, and learning a few algorithms. Okay, it's past 3 p.m. already, so let me quickly explain what I learned. At a basic level, what I was doing to solve the FTO before was just plain old reduction. So the same way that you can solve a 4x4 by reducing it into a 3x3, you can solve the FTO by reducing it into something like a pyraminx. So you start by building the centers, just like on a 4x4, except that there's only 4 of them, which looks like this. So as you can see, we have a white center, a gray center, a green one, and an orange one. And then next up, we build the edge pairs or triplets. So a finished one would look like this. And once they're all finished, it looks like this. And from here, even though it obviously has more colors than a pyraminx, it really solves in exactly the same way. So using whatever pyraminx method you want, you solve that reduced version of the puzzle, and bam, your FTO is solved. At least, that's the inefficient method that I used to use. The Ben Cisco method, on the other hand, is a lot more clever. It's kind of like doing Yao on a 4x4, where you're building a lot of those edge pairs along the way before you finish the centers, which makes them easier to do, and it mostly eliminates that pyraminx step at the end. So you start by just building one centerpiece and 2 triplets that go right next to it. So that looks like a big block like this, but since we still have 1 slot open, we can finish the other 3 centers no problem. There we go. And now we can very easily finish off our white layer by building 1 more triplet and sticking it down where it needs to go. just like that. And then with a few clever tricks, we can finish up the last 3 triplets up here, which looks like this. We put them in the right spot, and then there's just one more algorithm to finish things off, which is actually basically an A-perm. So it's basically just like the algorithm on a 3x3. And there we go. So as you can see, there's a lot more steps to this method, but all of them are very short, simple, and efficient. So overall, it adds up to actually taking up less time. I think it's actually fairly easy to get under 1 minute average using this method. And the best in the world can use it to get under 30 seconds consistently. As for me, I can barely remember how to do that algorithm half the time, so I'm gonna need some practice. So I'm gonna take a little break, and then at 4 p.m., I'm just gonna start doing solve after solve after solve using this new method, and see what kind of improvement I can make. I ended up doing practice solves for a solid 2 hours, one of the longest speed cubing sessions I've done in honestly years at this point. Within a few dozen solves, I had already broken all of my PBs, and I finished things off with a 113 PB single and 123 PB average of 5. But now that it's 6 p.m., rather than just keep on solving all night, I'm going to, well, first eat some dinner actually. Yum. But now that I have a basic familiarity with the method, I'm going to take this opportunity to try and make my solving a little bit more efficient rather than just keep on drilling all the bad habits that I have right now. To do this, guess who's going to make yet another appearance? That's right, it's Ben Puzzles. He's also got a whole series of short, high-quality videos for advanced FTO techniques, so things like learning better finger tricks, knowing your color scheme a little bit better, and improving efficiency when it comes to building centers. I think all those things will be very useful for me to learn right now. So I'm just going to spend the rest of the evening messing around, watching a bunch of those videos, and doing some untimed practice solves to hopefully learn some better habits early on in this process. In particular, I really drilled this new color scheme into my head, which is really important to know by heart while you're doing the centers. And even though I didn't learn any complicated new algorithms, I did figure out how to do a bunch of easy center cases that I just wasn't doing very efficiently to begin with. Alright, it's now past 8 p.m. and I feel like I've learned a ton about FTO today. And so now, instead of just like staying up all night and practicing, I found that one of the best ways to really solidify something in your head after you've memorized a bunch is to just get a really good night of sleep. So I'm gonna get ready for bed and then spend the next 10 hours or so asleep, which I claim is just very strategic FTO practice. I'll see you guys in the morning. Alright, it's 7 a.m. and I feel like before I start any real speed solving session, what I need to do is just a bit more untimed practice to really drill into my head some of those little tricks that I learned last night. I went through and practiced all those new center cases. A few of them I had to look up 2 or 3 times along the way. I also practiced remembering my color scheme quite a bit, just trying to get to the point where I felt comfortable doing some fast timed solves. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. That session felt really helpful, but apparently it's over 80 degrees outside already, so I'm gonna go on a quick run before it gets to 100 today. And now that that's out of the way and it's officially 9 a.m., let's go ahead and do one last big speed solving session to see how much I've improved on this puzzle over the last 20 hours or so. I did 2 more hours of speed solving and could just feel myself getting faster along the way. I started out in the 130s and felt like I was consistently averaging 120 by the end. Here's my overall progression graph if you want to check it out. I ended up getting 2 sub-1 singles, a really nice 55, and then a hilariously lucky 49, which I'll show you later. So that means as it stands today, I have a 49.02 PB single and a 112 PB average of 5. And it's now 11 a.m., which means my 24th and final hour with the DianSheng FTO. So what do I think? Well, on the surface, I love the low price point, the stickerless design, and the more compact size. In terms of sheer performance, I still think it's a bit of a toss-up with the Rex TO. This one might have a little bit better corner cutting in some situations, but I also for some reason find myself locking up on it a little bit more. When it comes down to it though, turning this thing just feels a little bit more tiring, whereas this one just feels effortless in comparison. So I think that's what's gonna put me over the edge and declare the DianSheng FTO my new main. I also sort of memorized this new color scheme, so I guess there's no going back now. As always, the link will be down in the description to buy it at thecubicle.com. They were nice enough to send this one to me early, and you can even use discount code Z3Cubing to get 5% off your entire order. But anyway, I'm gonna finish off the video by showing you this hilarious 49-second solve. Unfortunately, I realized that it was actually a misscramble, but who cares? I'm gonna count it anyway. If you're out there watching this video wondering if you should buy your own DianSheng FTO, the answer is yes. Trust me, you will not regret it. Whether it's your first FTO or your 5th, it really is an amazing value, and the puzzle itself is super fun to learn how to solve and to get into. Plus, the more people who learn how much fun this puzzle is, the more support it'll get, and the better chances it has of one day maybe becoming a WCA event. Also, fun fact, by the time you're watching this video, I will have competed at my 2nd ever unofficial round of FTO at a cubing competition, North American Championships 2024 in Minneapolis. I'll leave a pinned comment down below letting you all know how I did, hopefully pretty darn well, and expect a very condensed but super fun video about that competition next week. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.
Oh my gosh, that was lucky. Sub 50.